Bitcoin has been absolutely crushing it lately, dropping all the way down to $58,000, but then quickly soaring back up to $70,000. And in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what's happening, why I have put a large amount of my net worth into Bitcoin. And for all of you traders watching, stick around because at the end of the video, we're going to break down everything we explained and explain exactly how it relates to trading. This is important. You don't have to trade Bitcoin to understand and to utilize this information to improve your trading and more specifically, your fundamental analysis. So it's going to be a good video. Let's get right into it. Okay, so first off, I want to show you some of the price action that we have been seeing with Bitcoin so you have a bit of context for what has been going on. We hit an all-time high on March 13th, 2024, $73,000, but then not too long after, we dropped all the way down to $57,000. But as you can see here, recent price action, we have had a huge move up all the way back up to $72,000 US, just shy of the all-time record. Now, this is very exciting for Bitcoin holders because obviously a higher price means better times, better vibes. But I want to break down exactly what's going on here because the original spike all the way up to $72,000 was not surprising. You see, earlier this year, we had the very first Bitcoin ETFs get approved. If you've been following even relatively closely in this space, you know that this was the catalyst for Bitcoin moving up. But it was more of a buy the rumor, sell the news type of situation, as we often see in trading. Once the ETFs did get approved, we saw a sell-off. But that is completely changing. Now, stick with me here because I'm going to break down the two reasons why Bitcoin is moving and what it means for us traders. Now, if you are new to Bitcoin, you really only need to know two things. I first started stacking heavily when Bitcoin was under $30,000 last year, around mid last year, thanks to Balaji Srinivasan. The guy is he's an animal. You have to be following him on Twitter. You have to be listening to his podcast. But basically, he scared me a ton when he said that the banking system was collapsing. He said Bitcoin was the lifeboat. I listened to him, and now we're at $71,000. So thank you, Balaji. But I digress. You need to know only two things about Bitcoin. One, it is finite. There are only 21 million Bitcoin ever created, meaning that it is the antidote to the money printing that we are seeing today. The money printing that has just gotten absolutely ridiculous since COVID. I'm in Canada, and don't even get me started on what the government has been doing with the monetary policy. But of course, Bank of Canada, if you're watching this, love you. You're great. Second thing you need to know is that it's decentralized. So again, if you are Canadian or if you follow Canadian news at all, you'll know that in 2021, 2022, one of those years, the Canadian truckers, it was a huge global news event. Canadian truckers stormed Capitol in Ottawa, huge protest. But to many Canadians' surprise, the federal government got access to many people's bank accounts that donated to the truckers, and they froze their bank accounts, which is just absolutely insane. And the second benefit of Bitcoin is that it's decentralized. Government can't go in and just take your Bitcoin. There's no single entity. There is no centralized community or force that controls it, which is fantastic. So we now know that Bitcoin rose earlier this year due to the ETFs. We understand that Bitcoin is the hardest money ever created for those two reasons. Now, let's talk about exactly what is going on here, and then we're going to relate it to trading. And whether you trade crypto or not, this is going to apply to every single asset that you trade. Forex, commodities, indices, you name it. Bitcoin is strongly related, so you need to stick around and see what's going on with that. Okay, first things first. The reason that Bitcoin is starting to rise is due to institutional ETF inflows. They are finally back up again. So once the ETF was launched, we had millions and millions of dollars flow into these ETFs, but over the last few weeks, those inflows have actually led to outflows. Institutions have been removing their money, but that is now changing. You can see here that more than 600 investment firms last week revealed significant BTC Bitcoin ETF holdings. And you can see here that by combining major banks and hedge funds such as Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, UBS, the group collectively owns $3.5 billion worth of Bitcoin ETFs. Hedge fund Millennium Management is the largest investor with $1.9 billion invested. So all you need to know is that institutions are now once again flowing into the Bitcoin ETFs, which is leading to a spike in price. Now, the second catalyst that we are seeing is the Ethereum ETF. It looks like it is going to get approved any day. By the time you watch this, it's possible that it will have already been approved. And this is leading to a huge spike in price for Ethereum. Now, what's important about this is by the SEC stamping the approval on an Ethereum ETF, it means that the government is stamping a green check mark, a green light on the entire crypto industry. It's no longer just Bitcoin. Ethereum is going to have their own ETF, and this is huge. We're already seeing local governments, both on the municipal level or state level, I should say, the federal level, depending on the state, pass laws to protect individuals and their right to own Bitcoin and other crypto assets. So this is very exciting. And just to give you a little bit more context, the price of Ethereum has been absolutely skyrocketing. You can see here that we are up to $3,822, which is not shy from the high that we made March 12th of $4,000. We're going to get there. So this is a very exciting news, and you can see why it's spiking. Okay, so we now understand why Bitcoin has skyrocketed both earlier this year and both now. Now, I want to relate it specifically to trading. Now, before I do that, I just want to mention a quick 5-second caveat. This was first broken down on Lark Digest. It's the #1 newsletter for traders. It's going out every single day, and it is 100% free. Please subscribe to that down below. Lots of good stuff that we're sending you. Okay, so now let's relate this to trading. How does Bitcoin moving up or down correlate to me trading Euro USD? Well, it actually correlates very strongly. You see, Bitcoin is seen as a risk asset, and any huge risk asset like Bitcoin is used as a barometer for overall risk sentiment in the market, okay? So on any given day, any given week, any given month, the market has a certain vibe, a certain appetite for risk. They're either risk on, meaning they want to purchase risk assets that are considered riskier, or they're risk averse. They want to purchase safe assets. They don't want to take on a lot of risk. And this is always fluctuating in between every minute. It's fluctuating on a more micro level to a macro level of year-long views on what the market is feeling, how the market is approaching things. So by Bitcoin moving up, it means that the risk sentiment in the overall market, not just Bitcoin, is more risk on. The market is looking to take on more risk. They have more of an appetite for risk. What does that mean? It means that as long as we continue to see Bitcoin move up, we should have a bias to want to purchase risk assets and not risk averse, a safe haven asset. So let me give you a few examples. Some of our safe haven currencies, the currencies that are viewed as safe, would be the US dollar. Just scroll back to 2020, March 2020, COVID, go look at the DXY chart and see what happened. Huge spike in the dollar because it's a safe haven. Okay, so we have the dollar, we have the British pound. The British pound might actually be a little bit more neutral ever since the craziness of Brexit, but we have the US dollar, the Swiss franc is very safe, and traditionally, historically, the Japanese yen, the JPY, is also considered a safe haven. Now, Japan's going through its own situation right now with interest rates. A lot of stuff is going on there, so that could be up for debate. But traditionally, those are the safe haven currencies. Now, what about our risk-on currencies? If we see Bitcoin soaring, what should our bias be? We want to buy currencies that are considered riskier. Well, those would be our commodity currencies, the countries and currencies that are heavily dependent on commodity exports. For example, Canada. Canadian dollar, huge exporter of oil. Have Australia and New Zealand. They are also considered commodity currencies. And so you can easily backtest this and you can see exactly what happens during major news events. If you look at USD CAD, COVID, huge spike up. Weaker Canadian dollar, stronger US dollar. Whereas if we look at the stock market bull run starting in 2021, 2022, once all the craziness dissipated, you could look at USD CAD again. It went way down. You could look at Aussie US, would have gone up. The Australian dollar would have appreciated versus the US dollar because traders and investors were willing and looking to take on that risk. And that is how Bitcoin correlates to the entire market. Now, just because Bitcoin goes up doesn't mean the entire market is looking to take on risk. The more variables you can take in, the more data, the better. You don't just want to look at Bitcoin, you'd want to look at the stock market. You would want to look at these commodity currencies. You would want to look at different exchanges around the world. There are a whole bunch of different assets that you could look at. You would want to look at commodities. You would want to look at gold to see what's going on because gold, even though it's a safe haven, will still traditionally trade like a risk asset because of its correlation to the US dollar. So that is why Bitcoin is soaring, and that is why you need to keep an eye on Bitcoin, whether you are an investor, trader, whatever. You need to keep an eye on it so you can understand what's going on with the broader market. I hope that makes sense. We break it down even more tightly in Lark Digest, so subscribe to that down below. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, drop them down below. We'll gladly get to them. If you made it this far, we appreciate it. Until then, we'll see you in the next video. Peace.